Hello and welcome to another episode of What Does It Mean to Be Human, a podcast on life, meaning, and everything. And always joined by my good mate Ben Gare, and I'm Ron Saylor, the creative warrior. And we're two blokes here having a chat about what it means to be human. And on this episode, we're going to talk about meditation. We're going to talk about the different styles of meditation. We're going to talk about the benefits of meditations, different meditation. Also the cons of meditations, the benefits and the harmful effects of if you're using a particular technique that's not going to serve you. So we're going to kick off the show today. I'm going to get Ben to come in and probably kick off the dialogue about meditation, what his thoughts are on it, any meditations that you possibly do yourself, that you work with your clients, and we're going to just have a back and forth talking about different things of meditation today. So let's kick off the show. Ben, how are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks, man. Just kicking off a new week and slowly integrating into the world after the weekend. Definitely a few things came up then when you were kind of introing what's sort of meditation, the purpose and why, and I kind of just want to even preface everything by saying anything can be an addiction. It's like I've certainly had my moments where I was meditating a lot, and it came from, and often transference is a way of, if you're coming off one addiction going into another, as a coping mechanism for transitioning from maybe an unhealthy habit to a more healthy one. There still can be addictive processes in that. But yeah, certainly when in 20 years ago, when I did a lot of drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff, and in me transitioning into starting to do breath work and then meditating a lot, and I lived in an ashram for a little while and stuff like that, just my new addiction became meditation, and I'd spent hours and hours in it as a way. Again, it's still the idea of escaping something. So that's just something I want to preface with, that I definitely have a more healthy way of looking at meditation these days. But it's also, meditation can be anything that you do being present. It is often my reality now that, yes, there's a time and place to sit down and go inside and close your eyes to tune out all the external stimuli that we all have to some degree in the world. But whether it's playing music or painting or cooking or any of these kinds of things can be a meditation if you're just purely present to what you're doing. You're not distracted by anything else, and you're just there with the activity you're doing. So I just kind of, wanted to just put those two things out there to start, that we think that meditation has to look a certain kind of way. And that's not necessarily true, that there's many, many forms of meditation. Maybe I'll just get your opinions on any of that if you want to chime in from there.
Mate, look, what I took out of that was, like, when I initially said the cons of meditation, and like you say, anything can be an addiction, right? Even something that's good for us can become an addiction. If it loses the sight of the balance and we tip over because it's almost becoming a safety or coping mechanism for something else. And that can be anything that we do, right? So that's quite an important point that you brought up.
Yeah, 100%.
The other thing that I took out of that was that presence is the key to meditation. And it's true. You can do anything, right? I mean, you go for a surf, go for a run, like you mentioned, those other activities. And it does take time and practice, and what I find for me personally, depending on where I'm at, how much time I have, will determine what sort of meditation I'll do. For example, yesterday, me and my wife were at the beach. We were driving back home. She was driving, I was in the passenger seat. And in that moment, I just decided to do a breathing exercise. So it can happen anywhere. You can do it on a train, on a bus, transportation, when you're driving, depending on the level of meditation, the dynamic, however it's going to be. But the key thing is presence. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are aware of this sort of stuff, and this is nothing new to them. To all our new listeners, just, starting out, keep it really simple. That's kind of what I would offer. Don't go thinking you've got to go sit down for like an hour and focus on visualizations or focus on like all these different breathing techniques, because what you're going to find is it's probably going to give you the shits, right? And it's going to agitate you, and you're probably not going to want to do it. So I always find when I'm starting off clients with meditation or breathing exercises, keep it really, really simple. Like, even 2 minutes. Just start off by sitting quietly for 2 minutes. Set your clock for 2 minutes to go off, and you don't have to worry about the time, because your stopwatch will tell you the time. And then you just sit and you just, you let your mind do its chatter, and you just focus on what's happening. And the more you practice little increments, the better you're going to get. The more aware you become. You start to tuning into your natural breath. You start tuning into sensations in your body. You start tuning to the chatter of your mind. You start to bring it all back to your breath. But this slow, it's really slow process. For me these days, I rarely meditate more than 25 minutes. I just don't need to, and I don't feel like, I don't have the time, but it's also like I just don't feel like I need to go beyond that. And that's also due to my environment. Now, if I was at an ashram, yeah, I'll probably meditate for a couple of hours, because the environment and the energy is that collective. So we're all kind of sitting in that energy. But when you're kind of sitting at home and you've got to be functional in your day-to-day, find things that keep it simple, that keep you engaged and make you want to do it. So, that's kind of where I would probably start if I'm beginning or an introduction to meditation. Really simple stuff. Just learn how to sit, and you don't have to sit on the floor in lotus like a yogi. Sit on a chair with your feet firmly placed on the ground. As long as your spine is conducive to good meditation, meaning it's upright, it's not curved. If you want to lay down, you can lay down. Just be aware that you may fall off, into some slumber. So you kind of want to be present and aware the whole time while you're in that process. If it's at night, yeah, you might start off doing some breathing exercise, and just that's you're drifting off into sleep. Perfect. But if you're doing it throughout the day and you're learning, I would suggest you would sit up as much as you can until you start to embody the practice. Then you can start to shift it around.
Yeah, look, a few things came to me then. And just as you were sort of finishing that sort of thought, it made me also think of Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And often in that, he talks about getting a meditation spot that you do that's not the couch, not your bed, not somewhere that you have other activities, because your mind will slip into, this is the place I relax, or this is the place I sleep, or this is for X, Y, Z. If you can pick a regular spot in your house or room or whatever you've got, available to you, that when you go to that place, again, it starts to already tune your body to dropping into the space before you've even started to sit down and meditate and blah, blah, blah. That's my corner for X. So that's a good little trick there that I was just thinking about at the end there. Because, and look, and something I hear from clients all the time is like, oh, I can't meditate. Like, I hate it. My mind just goes overactive. and yeah, that's kind of the point though, because when we do have the overactive mind, it's about tuning it out, and rather than like indulging it in all of its rubbish stories that just constantly filter through on a pretty permanent basis for many people, especially if they're starting out. It's about that sitting with and not getting attached to. So if you start to see some cycle going or jumping on some loop of thought patterns, it's about becoming the observer to it, as opposed to identifying with the thought or indulging the thought or getting into it. It's like, oh, what do I need to do for dinner today? Or whatever's that, I haven't paid that bill. And this is the shit that is constantly there in the background for many people often. So that's why meditation is one of these great tools for starting to bring you out of the story and into just presence. So yeah, it's hard. Everybody can meditate, and it's just a discipline. And like any discipline, it needs to be learned, and it's by constantly doing and taking, like you say, carve out carve out 5 minutes and then increase it to 10 or 20, whatever is working for you. But yeah, highly recommending just the practice of starting to be okay with the space, in the stillness, and not identifying with the chatter that is quite common for many. So
yeah, great point on the sitting in the finding that place, and that's often what we do. I know my wife's got her spot, and she just that's the only place she meditates. I'm a bit more flexible. I've got a couple different spots depending on where I am, but they're usually the spots I go to. And also, like, that's if you're doing a sitting meditation. Like, we also have the availability, like I said, you can do it when you're walking. It's just the presence is key. But it's true, when you build energy in a spot, it's like you say, you kind of set it up. So it's almost like you are preparing your mind to go into this meditation, because that's where I go to meditate. That's my spot, right? So it's really important to do that. And what I was getting while you were sharing, Ben, was if we're just starting out into meditation, it's also important not to get overloaded with too many different techniques to begin with. Because, there are visual meditations, there's chanting, you can do breathing, you can just sit in silence, you can do body sensations.
Mantras.
There's so many different ways you can meditate. So what I would suggest is, if you're starting out, right, find something that you enjoy and just stick to it for at least a month or two, right? Before you start deviating off into a different technique. Now, you'll know whether you like it or not, because you're either going to enjoy it or it's going to give you the shits. If it's giving you the shits, leave it and try another technique, or cut back your time and sit in the less time and let that gradually. You're either getting into it too soon or it's not for you. And this is something, look, this is something that Ben and I have learned over the years. We've been doing this stuff for over 20 years. So, we've done a whole range of different meditations, right? And meditations can be dynamic or passive, or can be a combination of the two. Even rebirthing, the breath work we did is almost, it's a fairly dynamic, cathartic meditation, right, on some level. So that's what I encourage new meditators to do. If you're, been meditating for some time, then you're probably in tune to your body, you're in tune to your sensations, you're in tune to your breath. So it's a matter of once we get into that place, what are we meditating for, right? So if we're already meditators, what are we meditating for? Are we meditating for inner peace? Are we meditating for clarity? Are we meditating to, do we have anxiety? Do we have respiratory issues? Why are we meditating? Is it just to start our day because we feel good, it grounds us, it anchors us? I think it's important to also find your purpose for why you're meditating. And this is where different meditations can start to support you in those different areas of your life. For example, I'll do about 3 different kinds of meditations, and they may be 3 different breathing exercises. And one is for performance when I exercise. One is for my anxiety, and one may just be just to sit present to my body and just listen to the sensations, listen to my brain going off, and then coming back to my natural breath. So, they're kind of the things, they're some of the things I use, and that's, I've been meditating for a while. So it's always what's the purpose for me is important. You need to have a purpose in everything you do, but in particularly also when you're meditating. What do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, look, 100%. Yeah, and again, starting to get to this thing that things that you enjoy can be a meditation practice, so it's okay to translate the idea of being at peace and being present to what is, if you're a painter or a musician or something like that, and it becomes like an active meditation, but it's still a form of, so that's definitely an angle. And what I've also been kind of thinking about is Osho. We've done a lot of this. What was his meditations called? The dynamic, and do you remember what the other one's called? Okay. Anyway, yeah. But Osho's kind of theory was, and this was sort of in the 80s, that because the Western mind is so used to constant activity, he would like to exhaust the body so that you just did naturally slip into meditation. So he had a whole hour program, two different kinds of ones, where there was dancing or some sort of not strenuous activity, but unusual activity like jumping or holding your hands in the air till they were kind of painful and things like that. So it was a great way huh? Dynamic, not bio, but yeah, anyway. It And that was a great way. And again, in the early days, that's a really good one to kind of do, because again, you start to feel the nothingness without having tried to get there. You know what I mean? So it becomes the natural byproduct because you've just expended a whole heap of energy, and now you can just drift off into the presence and the stillness and the quiet. So he's another really good one to have a listen to his thoughts on it, or the programs he created for helping you do that. Because yeah, for all of us in the beginning, it's difficult to start to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. But yeah, anything can get you there. It's just about tuning the senses to understanding that this is a meditation as opposed to I'm just painting to do something today, so little things like that.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to add on that. Now, if you're new to this, and you may find finding a group, right, like a meditation group in your area is going to be supportive, because like I said, when we're all sitting in silence meditating, we're creating an energy field, and in that energy field, it's quite it's a powerful space to be in, and you kind of just drop into it. Now, I've done Vipassana in the past. It's for those of you who aren't familiar with Vipassana, it's a Buddhist style meditation where you're in silence for a minimum of 10 days, and all you do is you pretty much meditate most of the day, right, in different blocks. And it gives you an opportunity just to go into breath, go into body sensations. But the point of the story is there's probably about 100 people, if not more, in the large hall. And when you walk in there and everyone sits and everyone's quiet and you can feel the presence and the power, you just naturally just go into it, which sometimes on your own is going to be probably not so easy, because you've got the distractions of your house. You've got
I was going to say
this, I've got to do that. I've got to make
and things and stuff.
Kind of. So for some of you who are starting out, and those of you who meditate regularly, you may find a group that is supportive, that is a style that you like, and a good way to introduce yourself into it. Don't go do what I did, right, over 20 years ago. Never done any meditation in my life, decided to throw myself in a 10-day Vipassana. Came out 10 days later, I was ready to strangle people, right? Because I just not had prepared myself. So don't do that. Just some advice there, work your way into it.
Us good old extremists. Yeah. And the reason that we're suggesting like techniques like the breath and the meditation and stuff like that is just because it brings a focal point. They do inherently have, they bring something else to it. Like there is a reason you do mantras or you do chanting, but even if you don't want to get into that story, it's not really even the point. It's about, by having a repetitive something to constantly do, gets you out of the head. It's like, oh, I must remember to say the thing or breathe a certain kind of way. So these are just little ways to tune out the active mind and start to get you into the body, because again, it's all about being in the body and being present. So by having these tools, and again, working out which one's good for you is beneficial from that angle, but it's about creating a baseline of giving the mind something to do until there is nothing to do anymore. So so that's why we sometimes recommend these techniques that get you out of the conscious mind and start to let the unconscious unravel and unfold. So
yeah, while you were sharing, I was having old memories of us doing chakra toning back in the day, and it's a meditation where you every chakra has a particular vibration and sound, And there's a lot of power and vibration too, and the sound of our voices. And when we tune into that, you can feel, I remember I could just feel my insides reverberating, up and down the whole spine. And it's really powerful in the group. I don't do it so much on my own. It kind of it sounds a bit weird. But when there's a whole bunch of people like chanting, you feel that power. I don't know why, that just came to mind. I haven't had that thought in a long time. But yeah, there's so many different things that you can do. And it's like Ben's saying, it doesn't matter whether it's a sound, or it could be like the flame of a candle, or it could be like a mantra, japa, like any kind of like repetition. It's all about keeping you focused, because the mind is like a monkey, right? It just plays tricks, and you'll get distracted within like 5 seconds, and then you get caught up in this hamster wheel of all the things. And then the key is knowing that and becoming aware of that to bring yourself back into the meditation. And that's why we use different focal points, like whether you're chanting or you're doing a silent mantra, or you're focusing on a particular breathing technique. It brings the mind into it. And I was going to say, just on top of that, this is where yoga is a great thing too, right? As a form of meditation, as a dynamic meditation, done correctly. I mean, I remember years ago, I had one of the scattiest minds, and it was suggested I do some Bikram yoga. So Bikram yoga is that hot yoga, 90 minutes, same routine, doesn't deviate every single time, looking straight down the barrel of the mirror. And I did that for about 2 years. And I watched myself progress from being at the back of the room, because I would say if you're a beginner, at the back, and gradually as I got better and better, I would move myself forward and forward and forward and forward, until eventually I was like that person at the front, because I was good enough and I felt confident enough to be at the front. And then I realized, it was such an ego trip for me, because I was thinking, oh, I'm so good with my ego trip, that I realized, what's all this about? So once it all came back circle, I made my way back to the end of the room, because I realized, I'm not doing this for anyone or to try and impress it. I'm doing this for me. But what it gave me was the focus and the clarity. But I had to go through that cycle. That's why it kind of took 2 years to get there. My mind isn't like that anymore. It's much calmer these days. And Bikram yoga is just, I don't resonate with it anymore. I've tried to do it since, and my body just rejects it. And this is the thing. This is, I guess, an example where at some point, once you've kind of like transcended whatever it is you need to, that meditation or that particular thing you were doing may not resonate or align with you anymore, because it's probably time to do something else, because you've probably either healed that aspect, or you've like soothed it, or you've calmed it, or you've created a focal point where it's time to go and look at something else. So that's always important to remember as well when you're in your process, because, meditation is life. It's part of life. It's not just a 3-month activity. It's part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, and sort of the reason I brought up, there's things like mantras and chanting and all those kinds of things. They often come with a philosophy, and maybe that doesn't fit you, but it's not about needing to even when you talked about the chakras, like if you don't have an experience of a chakra, I don't know what one is, it's not even about the point. These things have lineages of old time. So like the picking a spot in your room to meditate over and over, thousands and probably millions over hundreds and possibly thousands of years have all intentionally put energy towards a mantra or a certain kind of thing. So this is not about me trying to get you to give up your own belief systems to follow something else or any of that. You don't need to get into the philosophy behind or the any of the belief elements. This is just about recognizing that it's a tool that's been used before and has a charge about it. And even if it's weird to you in the beginning, it can be just really helpful to use it to, again, create the space for you to drop out of your mind and have a focal point. So that's just what I wanted to, because I certainly know in the beginning, like I didn't have any belief in any kind of spiritual practices or Indian traditions or all this kind of stuff, but it was what was just available to me at the time, and I thought I had to go with that. And now I have my own ways of doing the same thing in tapping into my own lineages and things like that. But it's not about indoctrinating anyone into a belief system or any kind of things like that, because often like the yoga and stuff like that comes with a story, and it's less about the story, and it's about just giving the mind a purpose and something to do, which just can be really helpful in the beginning. So I just wanted to kind of preface that kind of thing. This is not about going a certain tradition, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and I back that up, mate. It's not about dogma. It's not about anything you have to. It's not like you have to give up your faith or.
No,
Because for a lot of people, faith and religion is a form of their meditation to God,
100%.
right? And sitting in church and praying to God is a meditative state for some people. And it doesn't matter what the form or the technique is. It's not about buying into the dogma or saying this is how it has to be. It's all the practice, right? We're kind of looking at the practice and the benefits of that practice and how it can be of service to you. Essentially, that's what we're talking about, right? So that's the important of what you're sharing, Ben, I feel.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up, because I mean, we have the backgrounds that we have, but that doesn't mean that it is the background of meditation. It's like every sort of belief system often quite has, whether it's like the Lord's Prayer or like Sufi twirling or you name it, that each one of them has their own kind of way of getting to the exact same place. Yeah. It's about not about again, the story of the dogma. It's about just a focal point for the mind to get out of the mind, So this was to just acknowledge that just because you've got a certain background in something or a strong belief in something, use whatever is within that, because I guarantee there is a mystery tradition pretty much in the background of every single belief system or religion or something like that was for training the mind, So this was just to acknowledge that there is lots, and we've gone a bit down the Indian path. I'm certainly not there much anymore, but that's if that's what it sounds like we're talking about, it's only because that's our background and it's tools we've used in the past, and we know that by no means is it the only tool.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of them out there. And like we've kind of talked about it, whether it's a visualization, whether it's a internal dialogue, whether it's a visual, you're looking at something like a flame, or you're chanting something. It doesn't matter. The point is just to really start to become aware, right? And this is all we're doing. We're just really starting to become aware of how much chatter goes on in our mind, right? We start to become aware of, like, where is my breath? Where is my body? How am I connecting my mind and my body? Am I using my breath to connect them together? Am I bringing heaven to earth, right? Am I using the power of my breath, my spirit, to connect my mind and my body? It's all about the awareness. And this is essentially what we do when we meditate. And this is what you mentioned at the beginning, Ben. It's all about presence. It sort of comes back around full circle. It doesn't matter what the practice is, whether you're sitting in the same spot, whether you're walking, running, driving, swimming, surfing, it doesn't matter what you're doing. As long as you have presence and you bring some presence into your breath and you bring some presence into the activity, you are connecting to yourself, to all time and space, and you're anchored and grounded in your body, you're anchored and grounded into the earth. And for me, that's what meditation does for me. And meditation is an element where I use my breath and I use my mind and I use my body to connect everything together. And that's essentially, my experience. And that's my truth, not anyone else's truth, but that's just my truth. And for me, it resonates really strong. And I know when I do that, I'm anchored, I'm grounded, and I'm in my own power. And when I'm in my own power, I'm the only authority in my life that can create everything that I want. As soon as I step out of that, I start to give my power away, looking for ways to fix me, to help me, to support me. Nothing wrong with that, because we all need that, right? But my point is, when I'm grounded, it's all there, and then it naturally comes my way. I'm not having to go looking for it outside of me, because it's already here.
Yeah, and probably one of just the last points that was coming up there. It's again like why are we doing this? And probably one of those big ones is it's an integration tool as well, because we work with sort of workshops or go and get treatments or going and have a session. And again, that's when it becomes even more important to let yourself catch up with what has just happened, you know, whether it's a big journey of some kind or just even like you've had a high emotional day and you're trying to catch up with what's going on. Let whatever event caused you to be unsettled and out of your space to come back into alignment and start to help it filter out. And you've seen me in the last couple of episodes where I've had a lot going on and I said I hadn't quite caught up with myself yet. And this is where sort of meditation becomes important. It's like a way to just whatever has been to come back to center and come back to you and put all the pieces just back into where they should be for having had a big sort of something that's gone on, like you've done a day workshop or a week retreat or whatever it is, or gone just even for a massage and a treatment. You need it after that too, because something has been stirred up within you and it needs just that little bit of space and presence so that it has time to do its thing in the background.
Yeah. I think, you know what I'd leave people with today? Because, you know, most of us have stress in our daily lives. Doesn't matter what we're doing. Most of us have some form of daily stress. So the question I'll always leave with my clients is, or what I suggest to them is, next time you're feeling stress, in that moment, just ask yourself, am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? Or where is my breath? Is it in my chest? Is it in my belly? How am I breathing? Is it really shallow? Is it deep? And it's just very simple, basic steps in awareness. And I don't expect you to be constantly vigilant, go, oh, how am I breathing? How am I breathing? Because you're going to forget. That's just what happens because your brain's always distracted and there's always so many things to do. But in those moments of stress, when you start to just go and you just pause for that moment, you go, oh, how am I feeling? How am I breathing? Am I holding my shoulders up? Let them down. Am I clenching my jaw? Let it go. Am I holding my belly? Am I holding my anus? Just let it all relax in that instant. And that's just enough to let the steam off just a little bit, right? And you just acknowledge that you are stressed. You know, a lot of it is acknowledging. It's okay. We all kind of walk around stressed. It's just how do we deal with it on a day-to-day basis? Start off with very simple, basic steps. Start off with, where's my breath? How's my breath? Am I tensing my body? Let it go. The more you catch yourself doing that, the more you start doing it more often. The more often you do it, the more you start to become part of your background, you know, it starts to become part of how you just are. And it's not just a constant checking in because you're just constantly that way. Mm-hmm. So that's what I tend to leave my clients with. And that's how I like to live my life because I find for me, it's quite important. And I find they get a lot of benefit from it. And it takes time, guys. It's a simple technique. I'm not saying it's easy. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes will, imagination, and it takes courage to keep flexing that muscle.
Yeah, because like the thing we're always trying to do is not run on autopilot, like automatically triggered by certain things or automatically do something a certain way because it's just how you've always done it with no consciousness behind why it is the way it is. This is about creating, again, like new neural pathways, which we've talked about in the past before, and by reinforcing over and over and over new ways of being, we can start to hardwire them as your reality now and not something that you constantly have to catch yourself and go, oh, I must do that thing. I must do that thing. It's not about right or wrong. This is about not running on autopilot and starting to just be present to what's here and now and not what has been, what has come from, why I do it this way, but how do I create in the moment and how do I come from pure presence here and now. I think that's a good spot to leave off, mate. Thank you very much.
Well said, mate. Excellent. As always, excellent.
Very cool, mate. Thanks for the chat, and yeah, giving people a resource to point to, and this is what this sort of episode was about. Tools that we've known and used to get where we are, and these are easy, free, cheap little, potentially ways of creating that stillness within the self, and yeah, highly recommend.
And if anyone's got any questions on any of the topics we talked today, on any of the meditation techniques that we may have mentioned that you're not familiar with, or you want more information on techniques that you may be doing that we didn't mention, because there's so many different techniques out there, feel free to drop us a line, send us a message, and more than happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, 100%. Feel free to reach out anytime. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Stay safe.
Catch you next week.